YouTube channel. Today, as you can see from the title, I am going to talk to you about my health, and I'm hoping that these sort of videos will bring more awareness to the illnesses such as endometriosis, adenomyosis, and mental health. And it will help somebody out there who's going through the same thing and who's probably not even diagnosed yet and have the same symptoms. I think it is very important for us to put more effort into women's health and researching for women's health and finding out and bringing more awareness into what goes on with women, because we are literally out here creating lives and giving birth to our next generation. So I think it's very important that we do that. So growing up, I would say that I was a fairly healthy child, other than the viral and the bacterial infections here and there. I did not eat well, so I sort of was borderline anorexic. But at that time in the 90s, nobody was really aware of eating disorders back in Sri Lanka. That's where I grew up until I was 15. And then I moved here. But while I was over there, I was going through some issues with my back, which later on, after a few attempts, got diagnosed as scoliosis. And they pretty much told me that it's a birth defect, sort of. So that was the only pretty much thing that I was going through at the time. Had a fairly normal teenage years, early 20s. I was pretty healthy, going to the gym. I used to love hot yoga, Pilates. Those were my thing. I used to be a runner. I love running, cycling, but all of that changed after I had a terrible relationship and a breakup. I gained weight and sort of took on this unhealthy path, seeking food for comfort, which just spiraled, and my mental health was pretty bad at that point. But I think that mental health should be a whole different video on its own, because I don't think I can include this into this. It'll be too long. But other than that, I was fairly okay. I would get the occasional period pain, ever since I started my period when I was 11. I would have the period pain every month, if not every other month. It was painful, but it was bearable. I was able to go to school, uni, do my other activities, dancing, things like that. And I was able to have a normal life. Back in 2018, I got pregnant with my son, and towards the end of the pregnancy was quite normal, but towards the end of the pregnancy, I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes, and then some other issues as well. But after I gave birth to him, I had a cesarean. I was pretty much able to get back in shape and be pretty healthy, start working out. I was very strong, built my strength back up, and was pretty okay. But I started noticing my period cramps getting worse. Didn't think much of it, went to the doctor, got some naprogesics, and it was manageable. So I just, went on with my life. And then in 2020, during COVID, I was pregnant with my daughter, and again, had a fairly normal, other than, the typical nausea and like loss of appetite. I had a fairly normal pregnancy up until the end. In my third trimester, because I was quite heavy, I had gained way too much weight, that like above the recommended level. And my hips were really unstable, so I had pelvic pain to the point where I could feel my hips, like my pelvis, moving when I was walking. So I was having a very hard time with my back and my hips, like pretty much the pelvic girdle. with pain, but other than that it was fine. I was trying for a vaginal birth, a VBAC if you will, and it didn't work out. Had to have an emergency cesarean. So at this point I have 2 cesareans and somewhat manageable period pain and a loose pelvis. Had the baby and everything, but this time around my mental health was really going down the toilet. I ended up having postpartum psychosis. It was very hard to connect with my baby. It was a lot. But then I somehow like was trialing new medications for my depression, the postpartum psychosis and all of that stuff. So I was tackling my mental health to the point where I was forgetting about my physical health. I started developing like weird pain everywhere. It initially started with like joint pain. So I would tell my husband that, oh, it's weird because I feel like all my joints are about to fall off, like it's hurting so much. And then it sort of moved on to, this was probably around 3rd or 4th month after having the baby, and I put it to like, you know, sleep deprivation, you know, being overweight, because my weight was very hard to come off second time around, and you know, exhaustion from having a newborn and a toddler at the same time. I just put it, you know, I thought those were the reasons why I'm feeling exhausted, joint pain, muscle pain, whatever. But then continuing on, I started getting like pins and needles on my toes and on my fingertips, which was really weird because I've never had that before. And so I decided, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna go to the doctor, get a regular checkup and see where things are. All my levels were normal. Iron level was, my camera got cut off. I don't remember the last thing I said, but I think I was talking about a blood test. Anyway, so all the levels were fine. My iron levels, you know, vitamin levels and thyroid, everything was fine. So the GP said, pretty much we'll wait and see in a couple of months, do another routine blood test and see where we can go from there. My symptoms got worse and worse and worse. It was horrible to the point where I wasn't able to whisk anything. I wasn't able to lift my baby because all of my body was hurting so much. I used to get frequent migraines and so much other problems with my body to the point where I felt like I was so exhausted all the time, no matter if I have a rest or what I do. It just was, I felt really unwell. So I decided, okay, you know what, I'm gonna go back to my doctor. Now at this point my period hasn't returned since having the baby, so that hadn't started, but all of these other issues were coming up. So went back to my GP and she said, okay, you know what, we'll do a couple of other tests. So because my iron levels, you know, the red blood cells, white blood cells, thyroid function, all of that were fine. She said some of the symptoms sound like autoimmune disease related. So we'll pretty much check for everything, check for arthritis, check for lupus. I went and saw a neurologist and got a brain MRI. Everything was fine. And with the brain MRI, the neurologist pretty much gave me like a whole concoction of supplements slash medications for migraines. And he told me that my skull is sort of underdeveloped. Nothing was wrong with my brain. The brain was completely functional, normal, completely intact. There was nothing wrong, but my skull is sort of like underdeveloped to the point where I still have the soft spots from when I was a baby. So he said it's nothing to be concerned about, but something that you should keep in the back of your mind should anything else arise in the future. So that was fine. Neurological side was fine. He checked pretty much everything, the spinal cord, all of that. So my body was fine from a neurological standpoint. So then my GP decided, okay, you know, everything came back negative for autoimmune diseases as well. So she said, I will refer you to a rheumatologist so he can follow up with the autoimmune side of things. And so I went and saw a rheumatologist, And he pretty much did all of these tests to rule out anything that could be common and possible with the given set of symptoms, where he ended up saying, you know what, I think it's fibromyalgia, which there's not enough research, there's no cure, it's just widespread body pain. It can flare up. Fibromyalgia has other symptoms as well, like headaches and heartburn and vision problems, dizziness. There's a whole list of other things that could go wrong with you if you have fibromyalgia. So I was being diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So pretty much no medication, nothing, but it said aquatic exercises would help, like swimming and aqua physiotherapy and those kind of things, chiropractic things, physiotherapy, remedial massages, things like that, and pretty much like normal painkillers for the overall pain. So at this point I was pretty frustrated because, but then at least I had a diagnosis, so I was okay with it. Sort of living through it, being a mom, you're already exhausted enough, and then add fibromyalgia on top of that. It just makes things worse. Anyway, my period returned, and the first time it came back, I remember I was in so much pain. We were still living in our old house. I was curled up on the couch because I could not get up. I was in so much pain. It felt worse than my labor pains. And if you've seen my previous videos on my birth stories, I've been in labor pain for over 30 hours with my son and over 24 hours with my daughter. And compared to those, this was far worse. And I really didn't know what to do. So I was taking Aprogesic, I was taking Nurofen, Panadol, pretty much anything that I could find, and trying like herbal remedies, heat packs, pretty much everything that I could do. Anyway, so that period passes, my period's heavy bleeding, I'm nauseous, I lost my appetite, I'm dizzy, very lightheaded. Anyway, it lasts for a few days, it goes away, fine, I forget about it. It comes back the next month. So I was pretty regular every 28 days. And my period comes back, same thing. I'm pretty much like, I feel disabled the first 2 days. I was in so much pain, it was crazy. Decides to go back to the GP, and she says, okay, let's do a ultrasound, a pelvic ultrasound, and see, might as well just do like an abdominal ultrasound because you've had cesareans. Let's see what comes up. The abdominal ultrasound found out that I have something called a hiatus hernia because I had really large belly during my pregnancies. My diaphragm has a hole and my stomach is going up, but it's not as bad enough for the doctors to do surgery on it to close it. So I can pretty much live with it, which might explain my breathlessness and all that stuff and heartburn and things like that. Did the pelvic ultrasound, and there was nothing. There were no scar tissues. My cesarean has healed perfectly. Ovaries were fine. There were no fibroids. Nothing wrong with my uterus. Everything's healed nicely from the cesareans, and there was nothing that they could pinpoint to why I might have pain because there were no obvious signs. So they did the internal, like the vaginal testing. I got a pap smear done again. No cervical issues, none of that. Everything was clear. So at this point, I was getting pretty frustrated because every month the pain would increase. So I was pretty much given like medication just to mask the pain and nothing else. Around the same time, I was trying to lose weight and get fit, hoping that it would help with my problems as well. I do have, whenever I get overweight, I do get fatty liver disease as well. It's there, but whenever I manage my weight, it sort of goes away. So, I started exercising again. I did HIIT workouts and I started eating healthy, you know, eating whole foods, lots of greens and vegetables and things like that. And I thought, you know what, hopefully I'll start feeling better. And I did feel a lot better than the slump that I was in, but at the same time the pain was still there from fibromyalgia, and the period pain was there, which was getting worse and worse and worse. And I had been admitted to the hospital a couple of times. They just give fluid, do another ultrasound, says everything's okay, and send me back home. Anyway, I went back to the GP. I said, this is ridiculous. I need to do something about this. I need to find out what's going on, because this is not making any sense and I need answers. She said, fine, I will put you through to the gynecologist and we'll see what she says. Went, saw the gynecologist, checked everything. Looks like everything's okay. You know, maybe because you've had cesareans, your body is still trying to heal itself. Maybe that's the reason. You know, we gotta, you know, at least check for 6 cycles to see if there's any changes, if the pain's getting worse, and this and that, all these and that. And then some of the doctors that I saw said your weight might be a problem, so try to lose weight, exercise more, drink more water, you know, the usual things that they say for everything that is wrong with your body. So at this point I was hitting the rock bottom, because I had no answers. I was in pain. I had a toddler and an infant to look after, and I wasn't working, so my mental health was really down the drain. It was horrible. At this time I would cry because I don't know what to do. This kept going on and on for months and months. So after I had 6 cycles, mind you, very painful cycles. After I went through that, I went back to my GP. I said, you gotta do something, because this is not working. She said, okay, I'm gonna refer you back to the gynecologist. So my usual gynecologist wasn't there. She was on leave, so a different gynecologist saw me, and she pretty much brushed it off and said, you know what, you need to be put on birth control pills. And I said, look, I've never taken it in my life, so I'm pretty hesitant to take birth control pills because I've heard really bad side effects from them. She's like, well, you know, we have like these tiers of treatment when it comes to uterus issues, so that's number 1. We need to put you on that and see. And she said, give it a go, we'll see, you know, blah blah blah. So I was put on the combination pill. Let me tell you, it is horrible. I don't know if that was just me, because I'd never in my entire life been on birth control pills ever before. So I don't know if that was because of that, but my body was freaking out. I lost my appetite completely. I got heartburn, I got body aches, I got so many issues. My mood was up and down. You know, within the same hour I could have like 4 mood swings, and my marriage was pretty much on the line, because my husband didn't know what the hell was going on with me. I am happy, and a moment later I am angry, pissed off at everybody, yelling and crying, and there was no explanation. It was all because of the side effects. The pill was making my hormones go crazy, and it was not good. They wanted me to try it for at least 3 months. By the time the 3 months was done, I went back to the doctor. I said, I don't want to do it. I am done. At this point, it's pretty much like in the beginning, end of 2023. And at this time, we had gone through some other personal problems as well. So we were all sort of in like this weird place in our life. So it was too much to handle. So I had to take a pause on finding answers for my period issues and sort of put it in the back burner. But then as the months went by, I just couldn't ignore it anymore, because I started fainting from the pain. So I would have, and I started going back to work, By this time, my daughter was about 2.5, 3. My son was about 5. And it was very difficult. Whenever I have my period, it is extremely heavy. I have it for about 5 to 7 days. The first 2 days, I was bedbound. I couldn't even lay down flat because it was so painful. And every time I used the bathroom, I would faint because I am bleeding heavily and the pain is making me nauseous. So I was vomiting and it was horrendous. Had to be admitted to the hospital a couple of times because I was so dehydrated. Fluids were given and discharged, nothing else. So after this, and we had moved houses at this time, so I was seeing a different GP, and she referred me to another gynecologist. Now this time, this gynecologist was new, and she also has a Sri Lankan background and was very, 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 very understanding. And I love her so much because she was the first person who actually cared enough to feel some sympathy for the pain that I was going through for like 4 years at this point, and to support me in finding some answers. She said, but because you've tried the oral pills, the next thing to do is to get like a intrauterine device. That sort of, we had to take that route to see how things would develop from there. And in the meantime, she said ultrasounds have developed so much in the past couple of years that they can now detect endometriosis if it's severe enough. And she was the first person to tell me that this sounds like endometriosis or adenomyosis. Now, before this, even though I was Googling and telling the doctors, could it be this? They didn't listen. Nobody listened. Like, it was horrible. I was just dismissed. And she was the first person who said, you know what? I think you're right. It sounds exactly like endo and adeno from my other patients as well. So let's see where things go. Got that special ultrasound done, and the results came back, and she said, yeah, I was right. Your endo is pretty bad. It is stage 3. So they have different stages, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And stage 3 is pretty much like moderate to severe. So I have stage 3 endometriosis, which is pretty much scar tissue built up around outside of your uterus. Now, they did say that my ovaries aren't free flowing anymore. They are in a kissing position, pretty much like stuck to each other and stuck to my back, which is why there is excruciating pain. At the moment, I get cramping and pain, like ovulation pain. I can literally tell you which ovary is releasing an egg that particular month, because it is so painful when that happens. And it is horrible, like nobody has to go through that kind of pain. And then she said, but lucky you also have adenomyosis, which is pretty much your uterus is covered in scar tissue as well. So she said the next level of treatment is the intrauterine device, which we ended up doing because I've had cesareans and never had a vaginal birth. She offered to put me under general anesthesia to insert the device and see how I go. It was a 6-month trial period, which brought us to this year, currently 2025, where I'm at. So I had it on for 6 months. I started losing my hair. My skin got terrible. I used to have acne when I was a teenager, and after about like 2023, I didn't have a lot of cystic acne that I used to have, but my acne started coming back. Cystic acne, horrible skin, horrible mood. That 6 months was really, really, really hard for me. And I got injured at work 2.5 months ago. I got a back injury with a slip disc. So I was spiraling again. It wasn't a good time. After the 6 months trial, I just couldn't take it anymore. So I went back to the gynecologist and she said, you know what, you gave it a good 6-month trial. It's obviously not working. It did manage my pain the first couple of months, but as soon as I had the device inserted, I was bleeding for 6 weeks and I was very weak. I had to go to the hospital, get IV fluids and all of that. And my GP said that I have extremely low iron because of the blood loss. So I had to get an iron infusion and I was going through all of this. It was horrible. I was breathless. I am like, it was not good. So when the 6 months was up, we went back to the gynecologist where she said, you know what, your endometriosis is severe enough to be eligible for surgery, surgical intervention, but she doesn't do elective gynecological surgery because she's also an obstetrician. So she's referred me to a specialist endometriosis specialist. She's a gynecologist, but she's a surgeon who's specializing in endometriosis, adenomyosis, and like uterus cancers and things like that. So she's a top girl, this doctor. So I've been referred to her at the moment, and she also removed the device from my uterus, which brought back all the pain and everything. But thank God I'm not losing that much hair anymore, and my moods are sort of back to normal. It's been like a month or two now since that, but I'm at the point where I am still bleeding heavy, and I am getting tested for my iron levels again because I was in the hospital the other day. I couldn't breathe. I passed out in the middle of the night and it's really bad. It's gotten really bad again where it's do or die at this point. So next month, in the beginning of next month, I have the consultation with my other doctor, which I will surely do an update after I see the surgeon and see what she says. But that at this point we are to make a decision on either we're doing the surgery laparoscopically or like cesarean style where they cut it open, and she's gonna do a hysterectomy, so pretty much remove my uterus, leaving the ovaries, but she's gonna get the ovaries pretty much cleared of the fibrosis or whatever the scar tissue that they have, and release them, so that will lessen the pain, and the hysterectomy will take care of the adenomyosis. So which means that obviously I can't have any more children. I'm 35. That's why the doctors are very hesitant, because women need their hormones to regulate their body, and I will immediately go into menopause once my uterus is gone, but they're keeping my ovaries intact. But that also has a risk of having endometriosis again, because the ovaries are there and it can cause endometriosis again. But they reckon for about 5 years I could benefit from the surgeries and be pain free, which I'm willing to take that at this point, because it's been a very hard few years and I don't wish this on any other woman, because it's really life altering. That's the update right now. I'm gonna finish the video before I start crying, because it's been an emotional roller coaster. Sorry if the video is too long, but thank you if you're still here listening to my story. And if you are going through a similar thing, leave a comment. I would love to build a community around this issue. Us girls had to get together and bring awareness to endometriosis, adenomyosis, cervical cancer, other uterine issues. It needs to be brought into light, and I would love to hear your stories, and yeah, let's build a community and keep each other supported. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video and share with your friends and family, and I will see you next time. Bye.